Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome on today's virtual discussion with Mr. Gerassimos Thomas, Director General in TG, Taxation and Customs Union in Brussels. As the Vice President of the Hellenic Association for Energy Economics, it is my pleasure and honor to participate and welcome you to the 6th Annual Symposium of Hellenic Association of Energy Economics. Before I pass the floor to Mr. Gerassimos Thomas for his remark, allow me to briefly introduce him. Mr. Thomas has worked in a number of different services at senior level within the Commission, including as Director in the DG for Economic and Financial Affairs between 2009 and 2014, and as Deputy Director General of DG Energy from 2014 to 2019. He also served as head of company of the Commissioner for Economic and Monetary Affairs from 2005 to 2009. Prior to his current position, he has held the position of Deputy Minister for Environment and Energy in Greece. Mr. Thomas, thank you for being with us today and sharing your thoughts on the broad topic of EU energy task reform. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Apologies for the delay. We had some connection problems. So, what it is important to note out is that we have a very comprehensive package of reforms that the Commission has proposed last July. They are currently being negotiated with the European Council and the European Parliament to become law in Europe. It is important to be conscious that it is a big acceleration of our climate policies. The European Union had agreed to a relatively ambitious package to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 43% in 2030. We agreed on that 2 years ago. The laws to this agreement entered into force in the beginning of this year. The laws that will allow Europe to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 43% at below 2005 levels. And given the urgency, the climate urgency that we have in Europe and worldwide, and I think the events over the summer highlighted this, we are now agreeing a further step, not only to reduce by 43%, by 55%. This commitment to 55% and to decarbonization of Europe by 2050 has been agreed already as a target by the European Council, the heads of state and government, and the European Parliament. It is already European climate law. So the package that we put forward is a package that it is helping us to deliver on this promise of cutting greenhouse gas emission by 55%. Now, to get there and to get there so quickly, I think it is necessary to employ and deploy all the policy tools that we have at our disposal. So basically, the package that the Commission is proposing is a very holistic package that has market reform measures like the reform of the ETS, the extension of the ETS to buildings and transport. This will make a big contribution and will accelerate the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Then there is a second element, which is our regulatory measures, a number of regulatory measures that will push the economy to lower carbon states. This includes regulations about the emissions for cars, regulations on accelerating renewable sources of energy, and regulation on energy efficiency, on transport, on aviation, on maritime. And last but not least, also introduce more weight in green taxation. Green taxation will be one of the instruments that will help to change behavior by individuals, behavior by companies, behavior by all sectors of the economy. And in this taxation area, we do not harmonize the taxes. We set minimum taxes, across Europe. At the moment, we have a so-called energy taxation directive, but the minimum taxes that this directive has are so low that they're practically irrelevant for the behavior. All countries have higher taxes than the European minimum energy taxation directive. So this new directive, what we will do, the first thing, we will change the way we calculate the tax. Instead of having a volume-based taxation, at the moment we pay X euros per 1,000 liters of petrol, or for certain cubic meters of gas, or for liters of diesel. This volume-based taxation gives an indirect advantage to fossil fuels. So we will tax energy according to energy content. This will bring at par the fossil fuels energy with renewable energies. This is an important, let's say, change that we will do. The second is we will prioritize, and we will have minimum rates that disincentivize the fossil fuels. So it will, to be practical, the petrol, the gas, the coal, they will be taxed much more than renewable sources and much more than electricity. So we have, let's say, we create a new ranking in minimum taxation by which, for example, when we talk on motor fuels, the petrol and gas oil will be much more taxed than if we have biofuels in the cars, and substantially less if there is electricity. Just to give you an idea, by, for example, in gigajoule terms, in energy content, petrol will be, in petrol we will have 10.75 euros, and in electricity 15 cents, just to give you an idea of the scale of the reprioritization. Then we will, in heating, for example, for heating companies or houses, we will have a very low taxing rate for electricity, 15 cents. We will have for gas 90 cents. The difference is much smaller, but still the ranking is different. Now, these initial changes in hierarchy of taxes will not be seen immediately, because we keep still the rates very low. And we change the system, we change the energy base, we propose to change the energy base, and then the rates will gradually adjust over a 10-year period. We need time for the system to adjust. So our proposal is to change the tax base, to create a new prioritization of energy taxes, and then only gradually over a 10-year period increase the tax rates, so that we give time to the other policies to work, and they give time for adjustment. All this is accompanied by a very strong social package. The European Union is proposing, the Commission is proposing to spend 72 billion, or more, 72.2 billion euros on a social climate fund. For Greece, this will bring in around 4 billion, from this social fund, in order to help the transition for vulnerable households or for small businesses. It's a substantial amount of money. Just to give you an indication, for example, Greece will get 4 billion, Spain will get 7.5, or Italy will get 7.8. So proportionally, given the size of the countries, countries like Greece will benefit proportionally much more from the social climate fund, which will be financed by the extension of the ETS systems to buildings and transport. So it's a package that it is comprehensive. We need to drastically change the speed of the transition. Greece is well placed. It has a national development plan for climate that has been ambitious from the beginning. It was targeting to reduce emissions more than the 43% that was the previous target, and we are very close to this a new 55%. The government, I understand, is preparing a new climate law to enhance the actions that it has already taken. And obviously, we need to be more ambitious in some other sectors that change has been slower in the past. So that's, I would say, as a way of introduction, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for your remarks and your interesting presentation. Referring to what we have already said, Greece's current policy is among the greenest in the European Union and serves as an example for other countries. However, the road until the final accomplishment of our national targets is long. Based on this perspective, what are the essential next steps that could accelerate the ongoing transition?
Well, I think first of all, there are things that we propose for all countries, new things that we propose for all countries to do. So we need a challenge for every country, and for Greece is to organize in a way that the ETS systems will be, let's say, expanded to cover buildings and transport. This is something that does not exist in most member states, and we are organizing with our proposal systems, and this has to be absorbed. It has to be legislated. It has to be organized and implemented. The second, we need to reform the current ETS system, and some of this reform is, let's say, for example, to bring aviation in. So the system, Greece has to do as the other member states, has to take these measures. And in the energy taxation front, we need to include aviation and maritime, internal maritime, into the system. Then I think we need to, so there are some new policy tools that being deployed at European level that have to be integrated in the toolbox of the Greek government in moving ahead. I think Greece has, as I said, had already some ambitious policies. It had already ambitious targets, for example, on renewable energy deployment. One of the most ambitious, programs in Europe to eliminate lignite power plants, and the Prime Minister now suggested also moving forward the 2028 target to 2025. So on the energy transition front, I think Greece has already and is moving ahead quite quickly. I think in the energy efficiency, the Greek RRF program has targets, to renovate by 2030 up to 15% of the housing stock. This is ambitious, this is difficult, but it might need to be expanded in order now to reach the new targets. So I think on energy efficiency, we need, like all countries, to probably accelerate a little bit more our action. Greece started a bit late on the energy efficiency. I think this government, as we see from the RRF, has made ambitious proposals, but they have to be implemented, and the renovation strategy might be more comprehensive. And I think on the energy reforms or the legislative package of incorporating all the regulations, adopting the regulations, making sure that the revisions to the different, let's say, legislation, it is done on time, is important. And last but not least, two comments. The first is industry. Industry needs to, to benefit. The European industry and Greek industry needs to become the winner out of this transition, energy transition. It has not been easy in the past. Greek industry had expensive energy, and this has to be tackled. So we are proposing a number of energy reforms that will, let's say, ensure the level playing field within Europe. So elimination of exemptions and subsidies in other countries to make sure that they are at the same level with the European and the Greek industry. And at the same time, we are proposing the carbon border adjustment mechanism that will protect the industry for carbon leakage to countries outside the Greece and outside the EU. This is important for a lot of the Greek industrial sectors, because the first proposals of the Commission on the carbon border mechanism is to apply this to aluminium, to cement, to fertilizers, to steel, to electricity. And the Greek economy has exposure and industry and in these industrial sectors across the board. And I think this is an important step. We are in close consultations with the industry and these particular sectors, which are Greece is very present to make sure that they reap the benefits of these new instruments and we adapt the instrument to their needs as well.
Okay, thank you. As you have already mentioned in your initial presentation, Greece is implementing comprehensive energy sector reforms to drive decarbonization and foster a competitive market. How can EU directives and guidelines on tax reforms affect this process?
I think it is, for some people, the change is too fast. I think the government has embraced. It looks to us through the approach of the government, the first response of the government, and also from the RRF. I think the government has let's say, embraced this ambitious journey. So, as I said, we need to accelerate the adaptation of the laws and the regulations, and we need to deploy the financing in order to make this happen. In the RRF, we have substantial funding dedicated to electricity infrastructure. We have a lot of funding registered to energy efficiency. We have money dedicated for sustainable mobility and installing charging points for electric vehicles. So electrification in the transport sector is very much sort of at the forefront of the Greek priorities. Energy efficiency in residential is in the forefront. It is difficult and needs to be accelerated. And electrification of the islands, these three pillars that are included in the Greek RRF are at the center of this policy, and we need to make sure that things are implemented, targets are achieved, and the policy continues beyond the next 3 years.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, is the business sector willing to adjust towards our the 55% goal for emissions reduction by 2030 and become climate neutral by 2050, do you think?
I think they are. The industry, if you look, let's say, at what has happened since 2005, when we started having climate and energy transition policies, the process was not so fast. The requirements were not so fast. The society did not ask so fast change. But now, I think, first of all, we have a big demand from the consumers. Consumer preferences have changed, and particularly of young people. Young people are even angry in many countries. They are demonstrating. They want fast change. They want to save the planet. So consumer preferences are pushing industry to change as industry. The products in the 5 years ago, the car companies would be opposing, the orientation towards electrification. Now, many car companies themselves have announced that they will stop producing combustion engines. So they will announce their own, let's say, deadline to electrify, to move to electric cars only. Second issue industry has shown that they can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Between 1990 and 2009, the industry has reduced emissions by 24%, while the overall economy has grown by 60%. So we have industry demonstrated that they can reduce the successfully. Many companies performing better than others, but there is an important drive in our industry to do it fast. Now, in some sectors, the technologies to green, so to speak, are not yet fully available. Some heavy industry, we need some, additional, let's say, technology to be developed. But for many other cases, the technology is available, and this can go ahead and happen. So uh, I think the last thing I would say for the industry, it is also a need in respect to financing. Increasingly, the financial system wants to see sustainability firmly anchored in the corporate investment plans and in the products of the different companies before they provide financing. So, having sustainable investment strategies per company, per industry, are a necessity now from all fronts. The government is putting certain conditions. The banking side and the financial system is putting conditions. Whether it is BlackRock, who is you can see is threatening to exit from companies that do not have sustainable companies and other funds, or whether it is the banks that get penalized if they provide funding to companies that do not have sustainable strategies. And last but not least, I think it is important to see that consumer preferences have changed. So industry wants to green, but they want to have a fair treatment compared to the world industry, and that's what we are trying to achieve. It's important to avoid carbon leakage. It is important to ensure to the European companies who comply with the highest standards that they are not getting undermined by production outside, and that there is similar requirements and are put in industry elsewhere. And we are working on this internationally, both at the level of the COP in Paris, but also at the level of the G20 to ensure that this is the case.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Thomas, for this fruitful and interesting conversation. I would like to thank you all for participating in this panel session, and we can go on with the next panel after a brief coffee break. Thank you.